I'll leave it with you and hopefully sharing will help. Over to you, Matthew. Thank you.
Can everyone see my screen? So I'm
Yes.
going to talk about what is the Credit Commons protocol, who it's for, and what it does. And I'm not going to go in any technical detail. And that should enable a broad discussion afterwards as to whether or not people think it's useful. When I started developing community currency software about 15 years ago, one of my first um, priorities was to be able to join them together because a lot of the local Let's groups saw themselves as strictly local, and it was only a few dreamers who imagined that Let's would be a new economy, a new money system, something like that. But for me, at the very least, it seemed important that community currencies should be able to scale by joining together. And that would give a decentralized, people-led payment system or money system, something like that. The definition of money is very hard to nail down. But also, I've witnessed a lot of community currency platforms coming and going. And very often they're either very, very simple and they don't help much, um, or they don't do accounting, or they die after a short period of time. So what I'm trying to do with the Credit Commons protocol is take the accounting functionality, which is the most specialist and probably the most difficult part of the software, and separate it off and just look after that component. And finally, for local groups who have to manage their own software, well, if not for everybody, when you change the software, either by doing a big upgrade or migrate to a different software, it can be very traumatic. It can take lots of preparation. The process can take months, and then you can lose data and certainly lose a lot of time. But if the accounting is in a separate package, which doesn't have to be updated, or which has its own upgrade cycle that you don't have to worry about, that's one thing that can make managing community currency software easier. So I briefly want to describe what is the architecture of a normal community currency app, um, which is also the same as any normal app on your phone. When I say app, it could be anything from a website with lots of JavaScript, like Gmail, to a thing on your phone which you open and it's sort of self-contained. They all use the same technology, which is on this diagram, the browser. The browser runs HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but it doesn't usually store any information and it doesn't usually do any of the clever processing. For that, it goes to the server where the data is stored in the database and it says, give me the data in this format or write the data in this format. So for this diagram, what you need to know is that the app in the browser is on your phone. Then the arrow represents an API. And then on the web server, all the logic is done and the data is stored. If we imagine that there's an accounting service that is separate from the server, it's actually called a web service and it's independent, then you can connect to the accounting service in two ways. Either the server can connect to it or the app can connect to it directly. So there's different ways to do it, which is a nice flexibility to have. And that means that you've got good ways to improve the maintenance. I can't remember what I meant by that. Well, certainly you don't have to maintain the accounting service because somebody else is doing that. Um, you can then trade remotely with other people using the same accounting service, or if the accounting services are interoperable, you could trade with people using different accounting services using the same API. And of course, you don't have to migrate or upgrade the accounting service. So that's where the Credit Commons lies. The Credit Commons protocol is the arrows with which you talk to the accounting service. And the protocol also defines what the accounting service does. So now, with a significant but not huge addition either to the app or to the server software, you can outsource the accounting to a Credit Commons web service. Now, I want to explain the structure of credit. I've started to talk about structures of credit because I find them interesting, especially when we compare different ways that you can arrange credit in a peer-to-peer way. So when we think about mutual credit, it's many accounts connected through a center. So it's a hub and spokes model. And that means all transactions occur on the same ledger, which is in the center. And in fact, no money can leave that ledger because there isn't any money. And in this case, there isn't another ledger. And so all the account balances on that ledger start at zero, end at zero, hopefully, and add up to zero. And the account balances, therefore, are just the difference in giving and receiving that each account has done so far. So a ledger like that would be one community currency with all the accounts. When we nest mutual credit, we actually make another account on every ledger that points to the rest of the world. And that can be represented in this way with stars on a star. And this way you can see that every account is connected to every other account, and note that there's only one path, and that means also one exchange rate between any two accounts. And this does not violate the zero balance rule. I didn't label these ledgers, but if we pay from the first spoke on the first node to the first spoke on the second node, the first thick line that you see would represent an account with the balance of trade of the first node against the rest of the world. So if Alice in Albany buys something from Bob in Brixton, then Alice's balance will go down 10 and Bob's balance will go up 10, but also Albany's balance against the rest of the network will go down 10, and Brixton's balance against the rest of the network will go up 10. And that's what the thick lines are about. And there should probably be another big circle in the center of that star. And that's where the group balances are stored all in one place. And so just to reinforce the point, Albany and Brixton and something beginning with C and something beginning with D, all of their balances will also add up to zero. And because it's nested, the protocol allows you to have an arbitrary number of stars on stars on stars. It doesn't care. It's just a matter of saying that each node here has a parent. And so what the Credit Commons offers is a way of trading between groups where each group retains absolute, I would say, sovereignty, which means they get to determine their own monetary policy, which means the rate of issuance and credit limits. They also get to determine their own privacy because it's not necessary to see into a group to be able to trade with it. It's only necessary to know that its account balance with respect to the rest of the world is within the agreed limits. And you don't have to have everything on one computer or running one piece of software. It's only that each piece of software must implement the Credit Commons API. Each group therefore governs itself, but critically, when a group is struggling to balance its trade, that means its balance is getting rather high or getting rather low. There's an automatic forum in which to work out the political compromises or solutions necessary to do that. So if you see Albany and Brixton on this chart, the first two stars, and let's say Albany is very low and Brixton is very high, then they share a common group, which is where I forgot to put the node, forgot to put the circle in the middle. And that's where they would negotiate how to get their balances back to zero. So that's what I mean by governable. And that happens within individual groups, and it happens within groups of groups and groups of groups of groups of groups. At every level, you can do the politics needed to rebalance the trade. So who is this for? Well, I've done 3 implementations so far, and it's on the roadmap for Community Forge. I hope people here have heard of Community Exchange Systems, CES. That was one piece of software which ran multiple groups, but then then they cloned it in various places, and they created Clearing Central, which is another piece of software like a Credit Commons server to do transactions between the groups. And in the last few months, I've updated Clearing Central so it uses the Credit Commons protocol. Humans is a network created and run by Stephanie Rearick in Madison, Wisconsin. They have a few groups, and they are also able to trade between the groups using the Credit Commons protocol. Interesting thing about Humans is that Stephanie has designed it with 2 currencies in each group. One is a time-based currency, so hours, and the other, she calls it price-based mutual credit. So that means you can price things in dollars, but you don't pay in dollars. You just remember promises of dollars, which cancel each other out. And Stephanie specified that those 2 currencies should not be interoperable. So to do that, we've created 2 Credit Commons trees, one for hours, one for dollars, and each currency in her site connects to a different Credit Commons tree. And so she can trade hours between sites and or promises of dollars between sites. Svenska is a very small group in Sweden. They only do a few transactions a year, but they were paying for commercial barter software. And with our help, we've migrated them to something nearly free. So that's an app which incorporates the Credit Commons to do the accounting. And Community Forge is about 300 groups using my Drupal software. And just as soon as they can upgrade, they will all be in the same network and able to trade with each other. I think that was the last slide. And so now it's time for a discussion. That was blissfully short, wasn't it? 15 minutes.
That was beautifully done, artistically clear. And I have some questions, so I'm sure other people have questions.
Yeah.
Stefan, do you have any questions you want to ask?
Yes. How would that, let's say, Matthew, you brought up this example between Albany and Brixton, and how would that trading happen? Yeah, the regular way you look whether there are products that you need in Brixton or the other way around, and then order them via the website, but you don't pay over the regular payment system in euro or dollar or pound, whatever. but you pay through the Credit Commons protocol or the alternative money network.
Yes, I could have described the user experience better. What the Credit Commons does not provide is a way to look at the offers once.
I love life. It actually offers so many possibilities. So, and stops some of them as well. So, Stefan, if you'd like to write down your question, can you write it into the chat
Yeah.
so that I don't know how long we're going to need to wait for Matthew, but
Yes.
he's the guy that's got the answers, hopefully. So, Martin, you're the next person in my portrait gallery for a round.
My question is basically how if the proposition or is that the local networks would stay sovereign. How is that sovereignty maintained? Both technically, I guess that's me just not being a tech person, but also in terms of like politically and power-wise, because if there's negotiation, if there's a negative credit balance, how is that thought to be handled? That would be my question.
That's a brilliant question. Do you mind putting it in the chat? And Martin, I'm going to wait until Matthew can give you an answer, but I suspect there are a few people actually in this portrait gallery who will be able to give you some answers as well. So thank you very much for that. Andrea, can we see you, hear you? Is that possible?
Yeah. I think apart from the questions that have already been asked, I don't know if I have any other questions apart from, yeah, I'm quite curious about how it works on a practical level with more like the UX of how people interact with it.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. And Simon, is it Quambi or Combi? Simon, are you able to talk?
Yes, I'm here. Yes,
Okay.
Quambi, yeah. I was going to ask about the UX as well. I'd be very interested to see what the user experience is like, the user interface.
Okay. So no additional questions then.
Potentially a follow-up, but I'd like to perhaps see that first.
And the next person in my list is Chris Cook. Chris, do you have any questions you'd like to ask Matthew when we get him for real?
Not really, Sue. Thanks. It was just a compliment him on a very clear presentation. And as I think most people who know me know, it's the governance that interests me. So yeah, how these how all these nodes interact in governance terms when they're nested is something I've been looking at for a long time. So yeah, deeply interested in that.
Thank you very much, Chris. And Florian, you're the last person in my portrait gallery. Do you have any questions?
That's fine. In principle, no question. It's a quite clear logical thing, which is also followed by the banks and the central banks and the World Bank, and it's always this nesting of a higher level. And I'm wondering, Matthew emphasized the scalability in the beginning, and I see two levels of scalability. The one is the level of how much people can be in one node. How much of these how did he call it, stocks or something like that could be assembled in one node, and the other is how much levels of nesting are possible. This surely not individual. No, but it's not surely not without limit, illimited.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And Francois, do you have any questions that you would want to put to Matthew?
Yes. I have two questions, both of which have sort of might have been touched on. I'm not quite sure, but I'll ask them in any case. So they, but one is the purpose of um, the protocol and the whole system is one of decentralization, or one of distributed distributed decision making, and so on, which when it comes to the actual transactions of value and so on, I completely understand and I have seen in practice. My question is, what about, so we're talking about a governance system which is equitable. My question is, but what about the ledger itself, or the software that's behind it, and the people who run the software? And there are decisions being made there. And in my experience, not necessarily in commons, but I've seen it in crypto world, where decisions are absolutely not made on a participatory way, but very much in a dictated form. And so the algorithms that are used in the background, the way the systems are made, and if are not necessarily distributed, I would say, if you will carry on doing it. So that's my question. That's my question. The question, I guess, is for Matthew to comment on what I said, and maybe to contradict me. and
That's brilliant. Can I just, firstly, Matthew is hopefully joining us again.
Yes.
But I notice in the chat that Martin's saying that the question connects very much with his as well.
Yes,
so what's
I
your
saw
second,
that. Yeah.
What's your second question?
And the second question is, Matthew made the comment that the whole system functions ultimately on a zero balance. In other words, everything ultimately equals itself out, and therefore you have trade equity. Again, equity. But does that mean? Are you actually saying there's no such thing as trade imbalance in the commons world? And if so, why isn't there trade imbalance in the commons world, where there is trade imbalance in the real world, in the world that we know, in politically and around the world? And the trade imbalance is, of course, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. That's one way of putting it, at least. So it's not equitable in that sense, in the real world. So what is it that the protocol does to guarantee this so-called trade balance? Sorry.
Okay, are you able to put that into the chat, Francois?
Yeah, I'll try. Yeah.
Can you hear me? I'm back and rebooted.
Yes, yay.
Okay. Answer to Francois's question before I try and catch up with all the others.
Great. Okay, let's go for Francois first. Thank you.
Francois, trade imbalances are natural and they occur almost everywhere. If there's no trade imbalance, then you're lucky. What you need to do with trade imbalances is try to balance them. There's no other solution. Everything else is unsustainable. And what we see in modern economics is a lot of ways of trying to get around trade imbalances by depreciating and appreciating currencies and by other means, but they all do nothing to address the inequality. I think that by using mutual credit accounting, where you emphasize the zero and the importance of getting back to zero, you bring the trade imbalances, a perennial problem, right to the front of the queue. And you don't try to solve the problem by manipulating statistics and units of account. You address it through politics. And that means that there are three ways of doing that. One is first of all, the surplus area invests in the deficit area to help the deficit area increase production. Second, the surplus area can lend to the deficit area, maybe just temporarily. And thirdly, if there's no other way to do it, they just give the money back. Because trade debt should always be short term. And once it starts to get long term, then it indicates a structural imbalance, which you have to fix through structural solutions. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's partly yes, but it doesn't answer the question. Well, how do you get political beasts? Because they exist in all worlds, including the commons worlds, I'm sure, to actually comply to that.
Because it's in everyone's interest to balance trade.
Well, you'd
If the
think
money isn't
you'd-
worth anything, then nobody really wants to have a surplus. And if you're building up greater and greater surpluses and deficits, then you hit the limits and you stop being able to trade. So it's in both parties' interests to stay within range.
Right, okay, but if you make it scalable
Well, this
worldwide,
was happening under the gold standard. Balancing trade was very important as well, and countries managed. And it also led to greater equity because it meant that no country was developing much faster than other countries. It sort of kept them all within limits. There are prices to pay with the local economy, though. I've seen that criticized by some economists. So there's always compromises. But to me, it seems that for social justice, you need to have trade balance.
Can we go on to some of the other questions? Can you look on the chat? Have you got the chat, Matthew?
The first question was about the user
Stefan.
experience. Stefan asked about offers and wants. And I was trying to say that the Credit Commons protocol only does accounting. It doesn't do offers and wants. But I'm working, at least in my software environment, with another project called Murmurations, which is excellent for sharing offers and wants between groups.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay.
So the next one is from Martin. Can you see that one, or should I read it for you?
I'm scrolling back. Maybe you can read it. No, I can't see the history.
Okay. How is the sovereignty of the local networks ensured, both technically but also politically power-wise?
Sovereignty technically is when they host their own software and it's open source. That means no one can interfere, or they manage their own security as well. They can use whatever software they like as long as it's compatible, and they can ask whoever they like to physically host it. Politically, it's possible always to opt out of the group your group is in. And you can join another group if it exists, or start another group. It's not very cooperative behavior, but it is an essential freedom at the same time.
Might I add to that?
Yes, yes.
The question was for me. Thanks, Matthew, for the presentation and this answer. The technical part is not so much really like the technical part of the question is maybe not so much really a technical question. It's more like if we need interoperability at a point between networks, which all have possibly their own, whatever they want to be running in as economic setups, and they need to still in the end kind of monorail on one unit to ensure interoperability. Will that, a bit like what Francois was asking, will that not become quote unquote the choke point, or like basically the unit of power in the end, so that the sovereignty is in some sense superficial.
So you're concerned that if all currencies are, all units of account are expressible in a single unit of account, which would be the one at the bottom of the tree, then that would compromise sovereignty.
Yeah, I guess that's my question. Exactly.
I think it's different in a credit commons tree to the dollar. We are not, prices are always in local units of account. They're always convertible into local units of account. If one group has a unit of account of apples and another one of bananas, then they need to find a shared unit of account in which to express the value of apples and bananas against each other as a ratio. So they might make a unit of account called kilos of fruit, or just fruits, where apple is one and a banana is one, something like that. But that doesn't affect their sovereignty. The fact that I can express apples in terms of bananas and bananas in terms of apples isn't a sovereignty issue. What's a problem? The problem you might be thinking of in the global economy is that everyone uses dollars and they have to actually obtain dollars in order to settle their trade imbalances and buy oil. But that's absolutely not the case here because the mutual credit currencies are not issued and they are not scarce.
So what if I'm partially, and I will stop taking more space here, but like just for the last question, if I understand partially correctly, it's not a problem then when the local currency is life-sustaining, like the local currency network is life-sustaining by itself for the community. And so as long as I don't need to kind of lifeline myself into the equivalent of a US dollar here, then I'm not impeded in my sovereignty. Would that be correct to say?
I can't understand enough to agree or disagree.
Thank you so much.
Feel free
you,
to
Martin.
write to me afterwards.
Katya, your question.
Yeah, that's in the chat as well.
Shall I read that out or?
Please do.
Okay, my question is for clarification. If one network goes out of balance, so one participant has lots of credits, can they go on a forum and they can ask for other organizations in the overall network to see if there are any ways to get back into more balance, i.e. another organization might need the services that they have. Did I understand that right?
Yes, that's correct. A group can appeal to other groups for trade in one direction or another direction. The protocol doesn't support that communication, which is why you're correct in saying they would have to go on to a group or a forum or something like that. But what also can happen is they can ask the parent group for a temporary credit extension.
Okay. And
And you
there
could also
isn't a
imagine
forum.
private loans on top.
There doesn't exist a forum at the moment for that.
No, it's not part of the protocol.
Mm.
It would be extra infrastructure
Yeah.
for the group.
Okay, so the next question I think
Thank you.
is from Florian. That's more like a comment than a question. I think zero balance comes in via the double, and that's an answer, isn't it? Was there one from, no, I think that were all the questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Chris in terms of comments, and also maybe how you would think of using this protocol at all. Do you have any comments to what's been presented? And how do you think you might use this in your work?
Well, you know what we're busy on, Sue, and that's islands. Everywhere's an island potentially. You know, a village doesn't matter if you're onshore or offshore. And resilience is all about being an island as much as you can be. You know, food independence, care independence, etc., etc. We should all be, insofar as we can. I think mutual credit enables or should enable us to have our own capacity to do things. That's, I think, one of the fundamental purposes of it. So, what then matters is, well, what's the route to market, isn't it? That's always been the issue. It was for me when I invented online. It was online trade confirmation 25 years ago, and I had a route to market problem. You know, if anybody owned it, nobody else would use it. You've got this paradox between neutrality and liquidity. If something's neutral, nobody uses it, and if something's liquid, it's not neutral. You've always had this problem, and I've spent the last couple of decades trying to work out, well, how can you actually crack that? And I think, and this is what Marcus talks about energy, for instance, as a hypodermic, the way to act, because everybody uses energy, and that residence, if you like, is defined by use of energy. There's a reason why banks demand utility bills to prove residence, you know, and that's it. That you can't live somewhere without using energy. So that's on the one hand, energy use, which is a utility. But the one that really matters to me, that I always present at this point, is that the first credit card was Diners Club, and no banks were involved in that. Restaurants gave time to pay to diners. And then because people didn't want, sometimes had to actually couldn't afford to pay the entire balance, that's when the banks got involved. But I think it's possible to imagine how one could bring, say, farms into a loop and have a tripartite, and this is where the local loop clearing comes in, and and really get down to something which people actually need. I mean, for me, and I'm sorry if I'm going on a bit here, but it's important. A pub is literally a liquidity hub in every way. And when banks went on strike in Ireland in the 70s, pub checks, promises started circulating as money. So for me, that's the hypodermic. That's the way through. That's, for me, the way in which we should be taking this forward is through mobilizing via creating companies, people who take bread together. That's what it means. This is the way that I think we can actually get mutual credit out there. This is the route to market, and I'll stop there.
Thanks very much, Chris. Michael, would you like to make a comment or any suggestions about how you might use this? I think you're already using it.
Yeah, so I've been working on multi-hop for a while. So with multi-hop, I mean either multi-hop payments or multi-hop netting. And one of the projects I was working with is Interledger. And what's nice about Credit Commons is that it makes it easy to know how the communities fit together. So there's only one path from one place to another. And that makes the whole question of how to do a multi-hop easier. So yeah, I'm working with community to add Credit Commons there. And that will hopefully help as that is being used more in other projects. So yeah, I looked into the protocol and it's really sound on many levels. We had a few comments like, oh, maybe the date format should be the other way around, but it's small things like that that we're improving now. So yeah, I'm very enthusiastic about it. And I think it would definitely also be a good fit, for instance, if you have islands that have their own energy vouchers, you could connect these together through Credit Commons Protocol.
And where are you based, Michiel?
I'm in the Netherlands, back in the Netherlands now. Last week we were all in Austria for the collaborative finance meetup. Several of the faces I'm seeing in this call. I also wanted to say it fits very nicely together with the holons that Simon is working on. It's the sort of the fractal nature of society, where you have small groups that group together into bigger groups.
Thank you very much. That's a beautiful comment. Florian, you're the
Sorry,
next.
so I've got to jump.
Chris.
So good to meet you guys, and it was nice to meet most of you last week. Great stuff. See you all again. Bye for now.
Oh, bye, Chris.
Good to meet
Florian, do you have any comment or how you might use it?
Please allow me a kind of a meta comment. The protocol is very fine, intelligent. It works. It's not a criticism which I bring now. I only want to criticize one statement. I can see that independence is a goal for economy. The cooperation and division of labor and in division of the commons, which no one can own, is a goal. We cannot say simply because someone lives where the salt, the guano, the oil, the gold is, he owns it. This doesn't work. We have to we come to a way where we can let everybody on this planet share, participate in what Mother Earth gives to all its living beings, the plants, the animals, and us. We are not the most important ones of them, but we are in a kind of a way, we are the important ones because we can support Mother Earth in distributing it and at least stop wasting it.
Thank you very much, Florian. And yes, thank you, Simon, for clapping him. Francois, do you have any additional comments and how you might use this?
I don't really have additional comments and how I might use it. I'm not sure that I would use it because I'm not. It has to be used by commons, by a community rather. So it's not about me using it. And yeah, and that's a big question mark. I don't know how you shift from one mode to another. And especially because in the real world, we're not part of a community. We may be part of a community, but most of us are part of multiple communities. And each with their own ideology, their own ideas, and so on, and how, and yeah, I guess it has to be introduced one by one or something. I don't know. That's a big question mark I have. So.
Thanks very much.
Can I answer that?
Yes, please.
The Credit Commons Protocol does simplify the world by representing it as a tree, and you get some advantages with that simplification. But there's another way that you can do credit, where instead of a tree, you build a mesh where every account has trust relations with potentially every other account. And the payments hop through the mesh in the same way that payments would hop through the tree. It's just that they have more routes, more possible routes through the mesh. And so the mesh can represent more of the real complexity of the world, but then it's also a bit harder to manage and run. I was going to explore that whole theme, but I thought better to keep it simple in this presentation.
Thanks very much, Matthew. Do you have any further, Francois, that you want to comment about that, or shall I go on?
Yeah, I'm just curious about the mesh, of course, whether that's similar to the blockchain.
No, it's look up Ripple.
Ripple.
That was the name of the first payments mesh.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Katja, you're next in my portrait gallery. Do you have any comment or how you might use it?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I hope that in some time down the line there will be a case for using it. I mean, I'm part of something called the Bristol Commons, but of course we've had the Bristol Pound here, and it didn't work out in the end. So I don't know if there's much appetite to do something again. But yeah, I think on the whole, I don't know. It might be good if there is a network already, and you can identify things where different communities would trade with each other. You know, like have a use case for it first, and then build something like that. I mean, I find it really, interesting, appealing to do something like that, but it's probably a bit further down the line. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Simon, I noticed that you've unmuted yourself. Do you want to make a comment or share how you might work with this?
Yeah, I was just waiting my turn. Apologies, I'm not on video. I didn't take enough vitamins at the Commons Hub, and so I'm unfortunately bogged down with a little bit of a cold.
Ooh.
I hope everyone else is okay. Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying, Matthew, about the mesh network as well as the tree structure. It's actually something I was talking to Mikhail about. Hopefully, as Holons scales, then it would be an opportunity to be able to reconcile through mesh networks as well. And I'm just wondering at what scale you think that would be possible with your protocol. And on top of that as well, I'm curious about the size. How do you define a community? What's the size of the community for this to be able to work? And what are you seeing in practice?
Both of those questions seem to be about scale, and both protocols, I would say, don't care about scale. So that's the short answer. Can you accept that?
Yes, and I'd just like to push a little bit further on the like what's happening in practice right now in terms of the size of the communities that have their own.
Can I add into this? Because I've had experience in Brixton from the 90s about working with communities, partly the local exchange and trade scheme. And some of the key factors that are really important is, firstly, a small enough group, and we're talking probably something like, and of course, although Brixton is multicultural, we're still actually talking mostly about white people, because the other cultures often have their own systems like partner and that kind of thing. But what we worked out is that once you've got past about 100, 120 people, there isn't enough trust there for there to be real trading between each other. And that's partly because mostly the way that we've learned in our culture is that things cost. And with this, what you've got to do is to work out, what are you offering and how valuable is it to you? How do you measure that value? And then how do you negotiate with the other about how they measure their value? If you've got a system that's beyond barter, so like this system, the Credit Commons system, then what you've got is you can decide what your worth is in terms of the service or the goods that you're offering. But that isn't easy, because so often we've learned what we're offering, how it's valued in the market. Like when we were working with Brixton Letts, babysitting was actually valued more than being taught how to use a computer. I am talking in the late 90s and early noughties. That might be a bit different now. But it's looking at how do you genuinely connect with yourself and what it is you're offering and the value of that in unit terms. I mean, we use bricks, but whatever it is, apples, bananas, bricks, gold, whatever. So the key, though, to that is two things. Firstly, trust. And secondly, how much do people value what it is that being able to exchange? Because we found that we had people who were over earning and everyone thought they were wonderful, but actually they were hopeless because we couldn't get the accounting system down to zero because they didn't have enough time to spend. And so over earning was as bad as overspending. It didn't help in any kind of a way. Plus, also, people are used to going shopping, but actually, if you say to someone, and I was doing some brokering with it, say, okay, someone over here about 20 minutes away is offering what you want. They say, oh, I can't go 20 minutes. I can't travel 20 minutes. So we're talking about people as well as the exchange system. I don't know if that's of any value, and please make a comment, Matthew, because you know about this.
I lost track of the original question, but I agree with everything you said.
Okay, thanks. It was about how do you manage the exchange. Simon, you make the comment.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to tie it into some of the interesting observations that you made. Because there is a question in there, I'm sure of it. Maybe you can think of it whilst I'm
Well,
stalling.
what you were asking was basically how do you make this work between people, is my sense of what you were asking. And it's not that simple. It's not only about, and Matthew's presentation was really simple and clear, but it's not only about how do you sort the accounting, but it's about the sovereignty of each area, each node, I think you called it, didn't you, Matthew? And how that node links with another node, and how the nodes in the star link with the totality of the star. And so it basically has to start from people. And the simplicity of what Matthew has designed makes it much easier. The difficulty with it is that that's not how we learn about money. That's not how we learn about how we work. And in our environment, we very rarely learn how to trade. Like in Egypt, when you were outside the tourist area, you traded. Nothing cost anything unless somebody wanted to sell and somebody wanted to buy. And we don't necessarily have that kind of way of thinking about it. We're thinking more about what's the market value, how much can I get for it, those kind of things, rather than how do I connect and communicate and trust that exchange. Okay, let me shut up. Okay, so does anyone want to ask any more questions, make any more comments, or offer any more points to what we've been saying? Yes, Katja.
Yeah, my question is like, what have the experiences with it been so far, or also other interoperating networks? And also, do you have like a plan or an idea how to, yeah, progress with it, or what is your plan for it now?
Are you asking me?
No, Matt. I was gonna add
Matthew.
that too.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you,
Yeah.
Matthew.
Well, I've just got too many windows open. I'm looking for that YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. What to do next? Well, I'm working on very, very long-term, slow, patient, grueling diplomatic work, trying to persuade groups that not only do they want to trade with each other, which I initially thought would be a no-brainer, but also that they can do it with not too great a modification to their software. In practice, I've had to get right into the middle of these networks technically in order to be able to do that. And if I'm not in the middle of a network, I haven't had any luck so far in affecting their technical policies. So I don't really know the way forward except to carry on doing that. I'm happy to say, as I showed you on the slide, I have made some progress, but that has been 15 years work. I mean, I started it long before I developed the protocol, because I knew I wanted to contribute to this space some way like that. But it's really been very difficult communicating with the commercial business barter networks, which is an obvious market for it. They have a lot of competition to be the network of networks. That's a potentially wealthy place to be if you want to extract barter credit for the barter economy. And also the business barter networks are much less interested in the theory, so they don't give me time to explain it. One hope is that CES2 could be a center of gravity for the future complementary currencies, in which case they would already be using it.
Thanks very much, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you.
Simon has, sorry, go on, Katja.
No, I just said thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Simon, you had your hand up.
Yeah, yes. So, Matthew, we had the opportunity to present to you a little bit about Holon, so you're aware of what Roberto is building and what I'm supporting. I really would have loved for Roberto to have stuck around a little bit longer because I really think it'd be nice for you two to bang your heads together.
No, he does. He is familiar with the model, and I have stayed at Liminal for several weeks, and he did talk about building it into Holons. That was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's absolutely still an intention, and we'd love to get it on the roadmap and be a little bit more intentional about it. You know, we're trying to meet people where they are insofar as that any community can use Holons if it has a Telegram account, and then we're hoping to build onto Discord. And the idea would be once we're integrated with the Atom protocol on top of Holochain, that you know, we would have interoperability and we would be able to go to any community where they are and start offering them these kinds of tools. We have tools around you know, task management and things like this. We haven't really developed the tools around currency. Although we have some of the mechanics that Hans Florian was presenting. So yeah, I'd love to set up a call with you and Roberto, start to think about what that might mean and how we might begin to think about integrating.
Okay.
Okay. We've got about 10 minutes left to finish. I wonder if you could just take a breath for a few minutes and think about what your action might be from what we've been contemplating here today. I really want to thank you, Matthew, for the simplicity in which you explained and demonstrated the protocol. But I'm wondering what we might now do from this as individuals and maybe continue making contact with you so that we can use it in the way in which we can. So I'm going to do a round asking about that. And if you don't want to make any comments, just pass. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to start with Martin first, if that's okay. Martin, do you have any final comment or how you might use this?
I don't know if you can see me. I cannot see. Okay. I'm not one of you engineer people, but I don't want to call anybody engineer who wouldn't like being called an engineer. So like I don't have a kind of practical use for this in my work, but I'm educating myself about this space and trying to kind of understand the concepts at play and the systematics at play. So I can say more than thank you very much, Matt, for the great presentation, and Sue for the very kind hosting.
Thank you very much, Martin. Florian, you're the next in my round.
Yeah, here we go. As François said, I'm not a community, I cannot use it. So I also have a protocol, I call it Twin Token Protocol, taking the community into account, which also has a problem which is solved by the protocol Matthew described. For every community can take care of what is internally be made at the most degree possible, but there's always export and import. And the export-import question is solved by the protocol which Matthew introduced. And as I said, the question is the distribution of unequally distributed gifts of nature or products of countries, whatsoever. To distribute them so every human being on Earth can have a decent living, and we cannot tolerate that. I don't know how much people die every day. It goes into the thousands. It's not tolerable, but we we just go on. There's pressure enough to change it. And Hornborg, in this video which Cecilie posted to us, there is a meeting in Norway of the degrowth people, and he is the one who said we need two kinds of money. Two kinds of money, and the question was already there with the hours and the dollars or whatsoever, no? And to separate this. This is a very interesting point to make. I would like to have another separation for the money which we need to buy what everybody needs every day again and again and again, which would be should be kind of a basic income. So you start somewhere thinking about money, and you get lost in history and in how people work together on this planet, because there's such a diversity there.
Thank you very much. Michael, do you want to add in?
Yeah, I'm adding Credit Commons Protocol to various places, and I'll continue to do so.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Francois.
Sorry, I forgot. I forgot what the question was.
Basically, is there anything you want to finish off and how you might take an action from this today?
Okay, so there was actually a question I had based on your comments, Sue, and you were talking about the size limits of 100, 120, and the need for trust. And yet, on the other hand, Matthew is talking about scalability and being all scalable, which means there's no limit in terms of numbers. And my understanding of some of the systems, the whole point of having the ledgers or the systems, whatever they are, whether they're a protocol or whether they're blockchain, whatever it is that the trust, it eliminates the need for trust. And because it's all documented and unbeatable or it's not unbeatable, but it's I forgot what it's you can't crack it basically. And so there seems to be a bit a contradiction. I'm sort of spotting, I don't know if it's a contradiction or sort of a different trends. One that's going for scalability and the other one that's going for small communities where people can trust each other. And I'm just wondering about those two worlds. I'm not sure what to do about them or what to do about it.
Matthew, do you want to answer that?
I don't know if it's a question, but
I think we've lost Matthew's audio, but I can chip in if Matthew can't.
Thank you, Simon.
And I'm not answering for Matthew, although I hope he would agree. Well, first and foremost, I don't think we want to design trust out of the equation. That would be absolutely the wrong thing to do. A world where we don't need trust and we no longer have trust. And trust is an important, essential currency in how we interact with one another. And then in terms of a scalability question, I don't think I don't think Matthew was saying that communities can scale to any size. And I think he would accept that we need there's a limit, just as you were explaining, Sue, on how large a community can become before we start to lose trust. What makes the protocol scalable is the tree structure. So the fact that we are arranged in this tree structure, in this holonic or holarchic structure, means that we're able to scale this protocol and ensure that different communities can interoperate even when they're not necessarily linked.
Thank you very much, Simon, because there's two things there. Firstly, I was going to say, Francois, this is both and. So you have the small community groups with both, and it's been called scalable, federated. And what I noticed was the word you used, Simon, of holarchic. And I know Francois because of our work together with sociocracy. So we're talking about inclusive communities that are linked and develop, linked with trust and develop trust, and having systems that are inclusive. And in fact, now we have here in the UK someone who worked with sociocracy, and Francois, I'm talking about Nate, who now has spent 4 years working with the Finance Conduct Authority to get an organization called a Mutual Cooperative Society, which is allowed by the Finance Conduct Authority to be incorporated with sociocratic inclusive organization. So we're in the process of developing that in a way. There's no simple answers, but there's ways forward in that. So hopefully that's okay, Francois, both and.
I can live with that.
Okay. And Jakob, do you want to add anything or just be present?
Yes, not now, not right now, but thank you.
That's okay. That's absolutely fine. Matthew, I'm going to pass over to you to finish, if that's all right. I firstly want to mention that actually The YouTube is on Ripple, is in the chat if you want to connect to that. I really appreciate everyone working here and their input, and look forward to continuing this, because I think, Matthew, in spite of the difficulties around the questions, I think this has worked really well, but I think they're going to want some more from you. Really well, but I think they're going to want some more. Okay.
Well, for this time, thank you to everyone for 20 minutes on this, my favorite subject.
Thank you as well. It was really good.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.